Back here on the Cover 3 Takeover here on CBS Sports HQ. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Barrett Salee. Time to whip around the country. Let's go conference by conference with your very best bet for Week 8. Now, we do have a loaded slate in the SEC, including our SEC on CBS Game of the Week. Barrett, where are you going for your best bet in the SEC?
Oh, I'm taking Ole Miss. I'm grabbing the 2.5 points. I think they win this game outright. I think they win it by double digits. I think when you look at this game, there might be some recency bias in what we've seen. Ole Miss's defense got torched by Auburn, and I know Auburn's terrible, and we all think, oh, God, here comes the Ole Miss defense of old again. The truth of the matter is they create havoc plays. They get in the backfield. They lead the SEC in tackles for loss, and I think we're overreacting to LSU's performance against Florida, specifically Jaden Daniels. I know he had 6 touchdowns, 3 of them were on the ground. Part of the reason he scored 3 times on the ground was because his offensive line didn't do its job, and that does not bode well against this Ole Miss team. I think right now you're going to have Ole Miss force this game into a shootout. I don't care that it's in Death Valley. LSU is simply not equipped to play a game like that. So I'll take the Rebels. I think the college football playoff race continues in Oxford, and the Lane train has his eyes squarely set on a mid-November matchup with Alabama in Oxford.
Sorry if I seem out of it, but that LSU Ole Miss preview we just ran makes me want to get my glow sticks and drop some Molly. So I'm having a little MDMA flashbacks here. But my best SEC bet for this weekend is in the Mississippi State-Alabama game. Obviously, last week, Alabama upset in a huge loss to Tennessee, loses 52-49, and I can't help but think that after watching his defense give up 52 points and watching his secondary, which Nick Saban takes great pride in coaching, get torn apart by that Tennessee offense all afternoon, Nick's been harping on the defense all week, going up against another pass-happy attack in Mississippi State, but albeit a team that takes a much different approach than what Tennessee does, and I think one that Alabama is much better equipped to stop. So I think the best bet in the SEC this week is to take the Mississippi State team total under 20. I do not see the Bulldogs being able to move the ball effectively against Alabama this week, and the Bulldogs haven't moved the ball effectively against Alabama since Mike Leach came to Starkville. I think that trend continues again this weekend.
Oh, let me just take that alley-oop right here and yam it on home because I got another play on that game, Tom, and it is right in line with a lot of what you said. Give me Alabama. I'll lay the 21, and I'll lay the 21 because the score between these two teams since Mike Leach arrived at Mississippi State is 90-9. 90 points scored by the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2 games against Mike Leach's Mississippi State. 9 scored total in 2 games for Mike Leach's Mississippi State against Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide. Mississippi State, for some reason, also falls in this awful spot on the schedule, always when Alabama needs a bounce-back game. And frequently, as you saw by that graphic there, Alabama makes the most of it. So I 100% think that Mississippi State's not going to score very much, and I do think that Alabama is going to be much more fundamentally sound. The pre-snap penalties, the execution errors, I think they tighten a lot of that up, and they end up covering this spread. All right, let's pivot to the Big Ten. We have the Big Ten in primetime with the little Penn State, Minnesota. You've got Ohio State, Iowa early in the day. Your beloved Fighting Illini are off this week. Maybe Purdue, Wisconsin gets your attention. Tom, where are you going for your best bet in the Big Ten this week?
Yeah, the Illini being on a bye is the best thing that's happened to these Big Ten teams because now they don't have to live in fear of a beatdown. My best bet is still in the Big Ten West, though. You just mentioned it. I'm taking Purdue plus 2.5 on the road at Wisconsin. The only reason Wisconsin is favored in this game is because it's at home and it's getting a perceived home field advantage. Problem is, Wisconsin hasn't been very good at home. It's only 2-2 straight up this season. It lost to the Illini 34-10. It lost at home to Washington State. And going back to last year, the Badgers are only 7-4 at home and only 5-6 against the spread. And what's more important to this matchup than those trends is that defensively, this Badgers team has not been anywhere near the kind of defense we've seen from it in recent years. Jim Leonard's in charge now, but the pass rush that has been part of his defense the last few years is not there, at least not at the same level as it has been, and that is really hurting the secondary, who just don't really have the kind of guys that you can ask to cover for 3, 4, 5 seconds, which is how much time opposing quarterbacks are getting. And this is a Purdue passing attack that will gladly take all that time back in the pocket with Adrian O'Connell, who will find his receivers open downfield. Purdue is one of the few teams in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State that is willing to test you vertically in the passing game, and that's a bad matchup for Wisconsin here. I think the Boilermakers are going to go into Madison and win this game, but I'll play it safe and take the 2.5 points.
I'm going to do the exact same thing, Tom. I love Purdue in this spot. You mentioned Aiden O'Connell, reigning co-offensive player of the week in the Big Ten after what he did last week against Nebraska. I think he continues it this week. Like you said, Wisconsin does not really generate a ton of pressure, and their secondary is pretty porous. They gave up 3 touchdowns through the air to Michigan State. And, I mean, look, Michigan State is pretty much a disaster this year. I think Purdue right now has kind of been lurking in the weeds, kind of just hanging around, not really being discussed as a potential Big Ten champion. Maybe because Tom Fornelli's Illini have been stealing all the pub. But I think this is a game where they go make a statement. And I think Wisconsin, the home field advantage, like you mentioned, Tom, it's, that might be a perception, but it's not reality. I also think the letter on the helmet for Wisconsin, it feels like people are still giving them maybe too much respect based on how they've played this year. So I'll take the Boilermakers. I think they win it straight up. But just like you, Tom, I'm grabbing that 2.5.
4 times in the last 6 seasons, Penn State has let a high-profile loss snowball into the very next game. 2017, 2018, 2020, and just last season, Penn State has just sort of let it slide. So, of course, I'm going to say that trend won't happen again because I like to live dangerously, and it's preposterous that Penn State is less than a touchdown favorite at home at night with a Minnesota team in town that has its own quarterback injury issues. Yes, I'm acknowledging that Sean Clifford being questionable should factor into this, but Tanner Morgan being injured, if he's out, I think that means more for the way I handicap this game than if Sean Clifford is out and Drew Allar is in. I think that Minnesota's defense, while it was looking great against lesser competition, has proven in recent weeks that you can go and get some against it. And offensively, Mo Ibrahim's fantastic, but they don't do a great job of finishing drives. And so I look at this game, and while Penn State's run defense is a little bit concerning, this line too little for Penn State playing in this spot. I don't think that they're going to blow it again. And I don't think that we're going to see a situation where Penn State lets that loss against Michigan snowball out of control and hurt them against the Golden Gophers on Saturday night. What about in the ACC? Tom Fornelli's beloved ACC. Barrett, what is your favorite play in the ACC this week?
I'm going with the ranked-on-ranked matchup with Clemson and Syracuse. I'm going under the total of 50.5. I think, Syracuse, and Sean Tucker's awesome. Garrett Schrader's been good on the ground, but I think this Syracuse team is pretty one-dimensional. They were successful. They have been successful on the ground with some outside zone, but what does Clemson do in the front seven? They shoot those gaps. Those are some really athletic, really deep dudes. They've got players all over the field in the front seven, and that is a bad matchup for Syracuse because I think in this one, Clemson will make Syracuse throw the football to win. Garrett Schrader is not capable of doing that. I don't see how Syracuse is going to get to 14 or get past 14 points. They might score a touchdown or 2. But in the end, you see Clemson jump up. You see Clemson get a lead. You see Clemson put it in neutral and just kind of cruise to an easy win. They don't need to make a statement. Everyone knows that Clemson can run the table and be undefeated. It doesn't matter if they don't have a 50-point win over Syracuse on the docket. But I think this game's slow. This game's ugly. Clemson's defense gets the job done, and Syracuse gets exposed as a little bit of a paper tiger.
Going to the same exact game for the only team in the ACC that matters this year. I am taking Clemson minus the 14 points against Syracuse. And like you said, Barrett, Syracuse is a good team. Syracuse is not a team that's going to finish the season undefeated. It's not a team that's going to finish the season ranked in the top 15 or the top 20, maybe not even the top 25. And that's going to start this weekend against a Clemson team that I think is far superior than the Orange, and it will show on the field. I think that Syracuse's defense is really good against the pass, but if you look at some of the advanced metrics, it has struggled stopping the run. And I think Clemson, that is an area that the Tigers offense will be able to exploit. I think DJ Uiagalelei has been a much improved player in the quarterback position. I think we could see him more in the run game than we've seen it so far this season with what Clemson's tried to do. And I just don't have much faith in this Syracuse offense to go on the road in this environment and move the ball consistently and effectively. So I think that this is going to end up being not like a blowout, get destroyed kind of game, but I do think Clemson's going to win this game by 3 scores, and it's going to be comfortable for the entire 60 minutes.
I like both those plays. I feel like I could see it going either way. The reason why I don't have a best bet here is because I don't know how the coaching staff is going to treat that bye, which is right on the other side of this game. Is this a Tigers team that's just trying to do anything they can do to get there? Or do they want to really just slam on the gas, knowing that you've got a little bit of extra time to rest and recover? Also, it's homecoming. I could see both of you winning in lots of different ways. So generally, I agree. But my very best bet is a game that's not going to get the kind of attention that Clemson and Syracuse is going to get, because these teams are not undefeated. In fact, both these teams are far from it. I'm going to take your attention to the Jefferson Pilot Special, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Duke and Miami, because do you trust Miami to cover more than a touchdown in the Jefferson Pilot 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time Special? Especially against a Duke team that has shown that it can hang with some of the best in the conference just last week in that performance against the North Carolina Tar Heels. Riley Leonard is going to have some success moving the ball, and I think that Duke's defense is going to benefit from the fact that Miami's offense isn't all that great this season. And Miami's own fans have been so underwhelmed by the combination of Mario Cristobal and Josh Gaddis. And they've tried to level things out just a little bit. Tyler Van Dyke had his poor performance early, and he has settled down. But I think that this is going to be a spot where motivation and focus are definitely going to be key factors in why Duke is able to cover this spread. Blue Devils are a good football team. It's not all Miami here, but it at least starts with not trusting Miami to cover this number in this spot. What about in the Big 12? I mentioned Big 12 title race, massive games. You got TCU and Kansas State. You got Texas and Oklahoma State. Tom, what is your best bet for the Big 12?
I like Kansas State getting 3.5 points on the road against TCU. This is a Horned Frogs team that has been phenomenal all season long, but it has just been playing banger after banger for the last month. It started with a rivalry game against SMU in which it won. It followed that up with a 31-point win over Oklahoma. And after that, it's been 2 straight showdowns with undefeated teams ranked in the top 10, starting with Kansas and then last week against Oklahoma State, in which the Horned Frogs had to come back from an early hole, force overtime to get out of there with a win. At some point, that has to catch up to you, especially when you have a defense that is proven to be as porous as TCU's. They let teams stick in the games because they can never pull away from them. And I feel like if I've had to play 5 straight bangers, Kansas State and its physical approach is the last team I want to deal with. I don't want ADRIAN Martinez coming at me like a battering ram. I don't want to have to try to chase Deuce Vaughn all over the field after being battered by ADRIAN Martinez. I think TCU is going to be able to put up points on this Kansas State team, but I don't think that TCU is going to be able to get enough stops to trust them to cover this spread. I think Kansas State's going to cover, and I think there is a very real chance that Kansas State's going to win, so give me the Wildcats.
Yeah, Tom, I agree. Kansas State's going to win it outright, but I'm going to go with the over. I was honestly surprised to see this total as low as it was, 53, 54, 55, depending on where you looked and what day of the week you looked, because ADRIAN Martinez looks like the ADRIAN Martinez we were promised when he signed with Nebraska way back in 1964. This is a guy who has finally lived up to the expectations. He's, like you saw the graphic earlier, 8 touchdowns. He's throwing the ball effectively, and I think that rushing attack is so dangerous and likely to hit big play after big play that it might force TCU into another one of those bangers, Tom, like you said, where they have to sort of put up 30, 40, 50 points to stay in it. I think they can. Obviously, we've seen that happen with Max Duggan and those wide receivers. So I was surprised to see this total as low as it was. I think this is an easy over. Like a lot of times, it seems like every week in the Big 12, midway through a game, we're like, oh, halftime, the over's already hit. I think this might be that game this week.
Well, let me tell you where that's not going to be the case. A little place in America called Stillwater, Oklahoma. When we're there on Saturday afternoon, we'll be dealing with 22-mile-per-hour crosswinds through T. Boone Pickens Stadium. I think that we are going to see Oklahoma State and Texas play a much more physical brand of football with winds whipping through the stadium. And this also happens to be Quinn Ewers' first true road start. So might he be a little bit rattled by those big old paddles? I think Texas and Oklahoma State, while you're right, Barrett, a lot of these Big 12 games have been flying over the total well before the conclusion of the third quarter. This will not be one of them. Give me the Texas and Oklahoma State under at 61.5. Another one of these massive games in these two conference title races is UCLA and Oregon in Eugene. Barrett, are you going to focus on that game, or is there another one that has your attention in the pack? Maybe Arizona State and Stanford. I don't know. You might have unique tastes here. But, what is your best bet in the Pac-12?
I'm not that much of a sicko, Chip. Come on now. I'm going to go with UCLA and Oregon. And I'm going to go with, look, you look at how this game is going to be played. I think there's this notion that the Pac-12 is the same Pac-12 we've seen year after year after year, where it's going to be 40-38 consistently. And sometimes these teams have shown that they will do that. But I think the number's way too high in this one. I'm going to go under. And I think it's because you look at how these two teams are built. UCLA wins the line of scrimmage. They win it consistently. Oregon kind of wins the line of scrimmage. They do it consistently. And once they've sort of figured out that they can use their two-headed running back monster in conjunction with Bo Nix on the ground, I think they realize, hey, you know what? We don't have to go spread it all over the field. So I think this is going to be more low scoring than most Pac-12 games. I know we've seen UCLA go nuts. We saw it against Washington. We saw it last week as well. But I think in this one, it's going to be more about ball control. It's going to be more physicality. And in the end, I think you're going to see UCLA, while I do think they're going to win, they're going to be rattled a little bit by Autzen Stadium. So I will take the under. That 70.5 points, that number just seems way, way too high to me.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with Oregon, UCLA, nor am I going to go with Arizona State, Stanford. I'm going to find a nice Pac-12 game in the middle between those guys. I'm going to take the under in Washington and Cal. Earlier this season, Washington looked amazing. The offense was unstoppable. They got a big home win against Michigan State, and they were just throwing the ball all over the field. Nobody could stop them. Then teams kind of figured out what Washington's offense was, because let's not forget, new coaching staff there. Teams have finally been able to scout it, and they've slowed that offense down. On the other side, Cal is another team that got off to a pretty good start on the offensive side of the ball and raised my expectations. I thought maybe Justin Wilcox's team was finally going to start admitting that offense was a part of the game too and try to score points. And then they lost a couple games, and Justin Wilcox completely gave up on that plan, and now Cal has gone back to trying to win every single game it plays 9-6. I think that Cal will go into this game trying to take away all the explosive plays that Washington is hunting for, and I think they'll be pretty successful at it. So I think that these two teams, this total is a little too high for what I'm expecting in this game in Berkeley on Saturday, so give me the under.
So I am going to go back to that banger, because I'm going UCLA and I'm taking all those points. I think that Chip Kelly is going to have the Bruins in position to potentially win this game and get his first win against Oregon as UCLA's head coach. I think that the road environment, is going to shake a lot of players on this roster, but not fifth-year starter Dorian Thompson-Robinson. That's right. I didn't say fifth-year senior. I said fifth-year starter Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who has made the most of his return to school, the most of his extra year of eligibility by being one of the top 5 or 10 most prolific quarterbacks in the entire country. I think that as we look at the Bruins in this spot, you are 100% right, Barrett. They win at the line of scrimmage. The $1 million meal table is paying off. And I think that physicality is going to make them prepared for the rainy conditions that we have. It has taken a while for Chip Kelly to get everything he wanted from the university and get everything he wanted out of this roster. But what we have seen so far is all of that coming to fruition. And I think that a big performance against Oregon is going to be that great spotlight moment where we start to take the Bruins seriously. So give me UCLA plus the points at Oregon on Saturday. Well, that game in Eugene happens to be where Josh Pate is. And you can watch The Late Kick with Josh Pate on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. He will also be joining CBS Sports HQ with coverage from the game throughout the day.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.